Hey everyone, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this channel, and to this entire world of healing, trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. Today I have an interview with one of my alumni from my two online programs, SmartBody SmartMind and the 21-Day Nervous System Tune-Up course. His name is John. It's a long-form conversation, as you can see by the timestamp of this. I think it's like over an hour and 15 minutes. But we really meander through his introduction to this work, his experience with this work, the experiences with family members and bringing this work to himself and how that shifted how he interacts with them, some stories about plant medicines gone bad, and just a really interesting, fun, meandering conversation about a lot of topics around the nervous system, healing trauma from his perspective. So have a listen, have a watch. And one note, if you are a student of mine, an alum from one of these courses, or maybe you've just been doing lots of my free resources, maybe some of my drop-in classes, and you would like to share your story with others because you are seeing how important this work is for ourselves and our globe and our humanity, let me know. I am hoping to do more of these long-form chats with my students, with my alum, with those who have taken in this work and have really integrated it and applied it. If that is you, send us an email, me an email through support@irenelyon.com. You can also access that contact page via my site. Send a note, let us know, let my team know, they'll get that note to me, and perhaps we can have a conversation on video like this or maybe on audio and share what you've been learning with the world. I think that stories and just a whole diverse range of different stories, super important right now because this work is very new and because we each have different trauma histories and different pasts and different experiences, the journey is going to look very different for us all. So please let me know if you'd like to have a chat and share your story and your healing journey and your learning journey with the world. Enjoy the conversation, and we will see you next time the next video drops. Hey, John.
Irene, how you doing?
Jinx. I'm good. I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice and relaxed. Yeah. Excited to chat, really. Yeah.
I wanted to, you provided some beautiful testimony, kind of more promo style for our programs,
Yeah.
which I so
Yeah.
appreciate. We'll pop a little video of that as we're saying this right now.
What's up? My name is John McIntyre here. I just wanted to make a quick testimonial video for Irene Lyon and everyone in the SmartBody SmartMind program. I just think that look, where do I even start? I think I found Irene in January this year after looking up some stuff to do with TRE, that thing where you shake, and finding out that maybe isn't the best thing I can do to heal and to integrate and to work through some stuff. And so came into the 21-day program and did that, loved that, and that created some massive changes in my life within a couple of weeks. Really huge stuff. Ended a relationship, ended a coaching, a partnership thing I was doing too. Created a huge change in my life within the first few weeks during those 21 days. Took that into SmartBody SmartMind, and then this whole year has been just working with the stuff that Irene teaches and the coaches teaching that thing. And I just, I have so much gratitude for Irene and the stuff she's teaching. I think she's an amazing teacher. So many times this year I've been doing some kind of practice, one of the exercises that she gives, and in my head or even out loud, I'm like, fuck, Irene is a genius. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, I don't even know if Irene understands how much, how great this stuff is. I like to use it with plant medicine. If I don't know if you're into that, but they go together so perfectly. And I've had so many, I'd say, life-changing breakthroughs this year. Way too many to get into here. And I'd say after the year, the biggest change is I feel more grounded and more calm than I think I've ever felt in my entire life. I just feel so here. And so, a big part of this is it's not that everything's perfect or anything. It's actually more that I'm okay to feel whatever's there, whether it's anxiety or it's shame or the different emotions that we go through. And that's what you learn in this work, that the goal isn't really to get to a point where you always feel good. is to build your capacity so that you're comfortable feeling everything. No matter what's coming up, no matter what sensation, what emotion, you can feel that. And when you can do that, it gives you such an incredible sense of power, personal power, because now you're not needing to control the world. You don't need to control the people around you to feel a certain way. You can find your calm and your center inside yourself. And this has just happened over and over and over again this year. And to me, the journey's only just beginning. I can see how important this work is, and how trauma and this work that Irene's teaching and that these people are doing is a huge, huge deal. It's, in a way, it's a bit like a virus, or it's infecting the world right now. And many of the problems in families and in governments and in countries are related to just this trauma. People didn't get raised the right way. They're carrying a bunch of really dark stuff inside them. And and this is really a way to get rid of that. Now, I've been doing this kind of stuff for ages. I've been meditating for 10 or more than 10 years. I've read various different spiritual books, books about being present and being here now and working with your emotions and working through your childhood stuff. I've seen therapists, and I would say hands down, Irene's material is the best thing I've found ever on this subject. And she doesn't mention anything about spirituality, but even this work is such an incredible, so much of the stuff I've read about with spirituality, it's the same kind of thing. It's like you've got to feel into your emotions. These things are going to come up and you want to release them. But not until I found Irene did anyone ever really explain how to do that. And so what Irene's done is just created this incredible system for doing this. It's really, really, it's absolutely a system. It's step by step. I think Irene as well, she's a fantastic teacher. I never get the sense that she's trying to be a guru. I never feel like she's, either getting too sciencey or any of that. She really breaks it down in a fantastic way. She's a great teacher. I think the exercise science or the that background that she has really, really helps as well. And I keep recommending it to everyone. Recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends. They're not all into it, but to me, it really is probably the very best thing I've found for working on this kind of stuff. So if you've been reading these kind of books for a while about being present, or you've been meditating, you've been trying these different things and trying to heal, trying to integrate, trying to work on trauma and things like that, I'd say get Irene's course. It's not that it's the only thing you need, because I think there's really, at the end of the day, there's lots of things a therapist and things like that can help, but if you want to develop the ability to work with your own emotions it actually makes you less, you don't have to rely as much on a therapist, on different people like that. This actually gives you the tools to really start to access some of these repressed memories, these repressed emotions, and bring them up, and gives you the strength and the ability to work with them. So I would just say that, do it. If you've working on this stuff and you've been reading these kinds of books, I just say 100%, no question, just do it as soon as possible. The longer you wait and then try all this other stuff, the longer it's going to take, So, this wasn't meant to be this long, but I literally cannot say enough good things about Irene and the material. And, she's great at referencing, Peter Levine, and she's got book recommendations and all kinds of stuff. It really has been some of the most life-changing stuff I've ever done, and not the kind of stuff where I'm dependent upon her or dependent upon anyone. I feel like I have the tools to do it myself. I don't need Irene. I don't need these kinds of people. I really feel like she says in the sales material, I really feel like I am my own medicine. I know what that means, and I know what that feels like. So yeah, if you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, can't recommend it enough. So just do it. And have a great time and enjoy it. Irene is amazing. She's a genius, and just do it.
Yeah.
And you're kind of in love with this work and what it's brought you. I want to know, what was going on in your world 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, before you found this nervous system stuff, not even my own stuff, but just what was happening? What was John's life?
Well, it depends how far back you want to go. I suppose
Go far back.
To the very beginning.
Very beginning.
When I was 18, I was partying a lot. I'm 31 now. When I was 18, I was partying a lot, drinking, drugs, the whole thing. I just wanted to be a rock star, but it was more about the sex, mainly the drugs, I think. And there was a little bit of music in there as well.
Sure.
And was getting into fights, like it was getting quite destructive and dangerous. And like I was acting out looking back. It was the whole rebellion thing. And at some point I'm like, I can't go on like this. Like I don't want to be 30 years old and still like this, because those people are around, or 40 or 50. And something, I don't remember why exactly, but something drew me to meditation. So that's when I started. That's probably my first foray into this kind of work of being present, playing with awareness, that kind of stuff. So that's where it started. And then it's probably just a more or less daily meditation, kind of Zen style, like focusing on the breath or counting or like simple stuff. And it didn't get very deep for years. That was kind of where it started. I do that 10, 20 minutes a day for a while. And I'd read different books about present, or this we can talk, this will be a tangent we can come back to, or I'll loop back to later, but read books like The Presence Process, The Power of Now, The Surrender Experiment, all this kind of stuff. And that kind of went on for a good while.
Back when you were 8, so it was 18, you kind of had your, I got to quit this path that I'm on. Was there like something rock bottom, or was it just a general feeling that I got to shift something? Like, was there a pivotal moment?
It wasn't, I don't think it was one moment, but I did keep getting into, I mean, I was doing, like, we're doing just like, what would I say? Like, I was getting into fights. I seemed to have this thing where I would dress up like a rock star. So like a Motley Crue from the 80s, right? I wanted to be as flamboyant and outrageous as possible. I had eyeliner and black nail polish. And then I really seemed to get off on having this kind of FU attitude. I don't know if I can swear here, but
sure, you totally can. Yeah.
Oh, well, so the whole fuck you attitude then. Yeah. And I would, of course, dress like that, especially in suburban Sydney, attracted a lot of attention, a lot of it negative attention. Some people would like love or hate it, right? So some girls would love it. It got me a lot of good attention that way, but some hated it, obviously. A lot of guys used it as an opportunity to pick on me. But then I always had this thing where I needed to, if they, called me a fag or something like that, I would always respond with something like, I haven't told this story in this much detail.
I want to hear it. Where were you exactly in Sydney?
Well, one of them, we were sitting in, I think late one night, we've been drinking, probably had like a bottle of vodka to show, like I would drink a lot. I'm all dressed up in this, outfit. And then some kids probably our age came into we were sitting out the front of a petrol, like a gas station. And I don't remember what they said to me. It might've been, it called me a fag. It was something, called me a fag, called me something. And I just like looked at them and was like, suck my dick. And then I got this, and I can barely remember this because I was so drunk, but I got this massive kick to, one of them kicked me straight in the face and the jaw. I think it chipped a tooth, and then there was this big scuffle. It didn't really amount to much, but there was like a bunch of situations like that at some point, like you could say my intuition or my guts, like this is dangerous. Like I've been lucky so far. There's a whole, that wasn't like an exception. There was I could probably think of 4 or 5 different occasions like that, maybe more, when I think something in me was like, this is not safe. And you're like, your luck will run out eventually. And we did one night, I think it was New Year's Eve. We'd been out and we'd, again, it was like a bottle of something, probably a bottle of whiskey. I don't know. And then I think that night was speed as well. I haven't shared any of this stuff. This is really interesting, but it feels right. So then, I think black. I can't remember this. My cousin was with me. We got out at a train station to get, to withdraw some cash. Yeah. And then there was I guess a gang or a group of kids, not kids, probably boys, teenagers. And I think they came around. King hit me on the back of my head. I can't remember this. This is just coming from my cousin. King hit me, and he got wrapped up in it too. And they were hitting us pretty hard. It could have been pretty messed up. Yeah. And then another group of people came up the road, and one of them had a hockey stick for some reason and broke it over one of these kids' head. And then they scattered. And so there was like experiences later that night. I got into another fight because I was wearing these tight leather, I was wearing this Guns N' Roses t-shirt and this real tight sort of leather pants, shiny leather pants. Yeah. And again, it's a guy trying to start a fight with me. And again, it's me trying to be all like cocky and back at him, which, so there's a bunch of these kind of things, and eventually it's like, this is not going to end well. Like, it's like already getting to a point where it's like right on the edge of doing some really bad, serious long-term damage. Where you could end up in hospital for a while. Maybe you could, people die in these kind of situations too. So it's like, I'm playing with fire. I don't know, something like that. I was like, I need to clean my act up a bit. So,
I lived in Australia for about 2 years, give or take a few months. And there was a level of aggression and violence, and it was like a pent up rage that I experienced there. This is just my experience, that I haven't felt in Canada if I've been in America traveling, and even in Europe, in the UK. And I don't, it was a really interesting, I don't know what it is. I'm sure an anthropologist or a sociologist could pull that apart a little bit more. But I remember sitting in one of our trainings in Sydney a couple of years ago. It was an SE training. And it's so interesting you mentioned meditation. So I'm looping this. I had lived there. Most of the assistants were not Aussie because the trainings were new. So we were flown over from North America. And there were SEPs there who were training to be assistants. And there was one day where the instructor decided to start the day off with a meditation, like a more classic mindfulness, Buddhist, very slow, very calm, which I love as a way to start, but I've sat on the corner of the room, John, and this, it's not the teacher's fault necessarily, because this is just how he would play in the United States or Canada or wherever. And I could feel myself, because I'm very tuned to energy in the room, I just started to cry. Like, I could sense people starting to fidget and be uncomfortable. And it was too much compression and getting quiet at the beginning, when people really needed to talk and, have their morning tea and do all the things that are I learned is so common in Aussie culture. You're always having tea, you're always having biscuits, there's always this wanting to chat, which is great. And it was really interesting to feel the level of uncomfortableness in the room. And then as soon as he finished the meditation, I have never heard a class burst out so quickly talking. It was, do you see where I'm going with that? It was like everybody was wanting to talk at the very beginning of class, but it was started with this, I almost want to say, misattuned way of dropping in. It's possible that would have been perfect after a lunch break, after there had been lots of chatter and people needed to settle, but there needed to be that chatter at the beginning to attune people to where everybody was at. Anyway, I just remember us talking about that afterwards, and the instructor was very much confused about the level of that day. There was all this aggression that came out in the class that wasn't normal in that part of the SE training. Like, usually it's something that happens later on. And there was just like, people were snapping and people were being kind of mean in sessions, like unconsciously. And us assistants were like, this is really interesting. We never used to see this in North America. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. I don't know if you resonate, knowing you've traveled and been in different groups in different parts of the world. So any thought on that as a native Aussie?
I lived in Thailand for most of the last 10 years. I've only recently come back to Australia, and I feel safer there than I do in I could walk around there at 2 a.m. at night without really a care in the world. In Sydney though, like I've gotten into all these fights I've gotten into, like it's a bit sketchy, like especially if you're going through certain areas or you're around bars and things like that. Like, there's people out looking for trouble. I spent a month in Vancouver. I didn't get out too much. That seems similar to Australia, pretty chill for the most part in most places. America, I was in San Francisco and someone broke into a car like in broad daylight. There was always a bit more of something in America. Like, it's a bit, I don't know, it did feel a bit more of a violent edge in America. I probably feel safer in Australia than America. I don't know if that's movies and all the pop culture and stuff like that.
That's interesting.
everywhere else, like Europe and other places, don't really faze me. South America, I was in Medellin with the scene of Narcos, that one about Pablo Escobar,
Uh-huh.
and the murder capital of the world, or it was, I think, back then. And that was pretty sketchy. Everyone had a story of being, robbed at an ATM, or robbed at a
Mhm.
at a stoplight in traffic, or robbed on the highway, or robbed walking home from the bar. Like, it was common. Robbed at gunpoint, knife
Yeah.
point. Like, that was
Yeah.
very. That
Common.
was that was more just normal. It was like, you don't go to these areas of the city because there's gangs there. They'll kidnap you, extort whoever, blah blah. It's just normal. It's like, so that was probably the most dangerous place I've been, but it's still manageable. If you
Yeah.
don't do dumb stuff, basically, yeah.
You need your street smarts.
But that's an interesting thing about Australia. Like, and we can get into this later, but
Yeah.
like, I think for me, it's been I think part of learning to part of this, like the somatic work, has been tapping into that aggression, or realizing, probably a big part of it has been realizing how much anger or aggression energy there is in me, or has been.
Mhm.
That's blown me away, so I'm sure it's probably similar. I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar. It's an interesting thing. It was like a cultural issue. It's not just like a
Cultural.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible it's a cultural thing. But you're correct. I mean, I think we're comfortable where we're used to, but I remember and this is true, one of the only times I felt unsafe as a female in public was on a train somewhere, going somewhere to visit a friend outside of Sydney. And it was late, or I don't know if I was coming or going, but a bunch of guys got on. They were clearly intoxicated. They had their rugby garb on and very boisterous. And I remember feeling, I don't know if I should be here right now. And obviously I was fine, but there was a little bit of a guard. Whereas I've taken the subway late at night in Paris, Rome, New York, San Francisco, and have never felt that. And again, it could have just been I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and who knows, but it's a very visceral, we would call it in our work, episodic memory, where I can still remember having a little edge. And I had never felt that. And I've traveled a lot through the world on my own and with people, but on my own. So it always kind of stood out. And then when that thing occurred in that training, I kind of felt a general sense of that in the people, and they weren't trying to harm anyone deliberately. It was completely unconscious. But there was just a lot of stored aggression. So it's interesting you say you've learned. Tell me more about that. How have you experienced aggression coming out in a way that's now healthy and isn't getting into fights wearing Motley Crue pants and being drunk at a gas station?
Well, I mean, where I got into this, how I found you and your courses was, where do I start with that? So October, a couple of years ago, I'm into plant medicine. I know you talk about this in some of your videos, but I hired a couple of people as coaches, they were sort of like life coaches, back in I think it was 19. Yeah, not last year, before, in 2019. My girlfriend at the time was already working with them. My sister had worked with them. So I was like, oh, great. They seem pretty good. We'll sign up. And I think I was helping them with some marketing, and the ad was get unstuck and on purpose. And I was like, that sounds good. My life's pretty good, but there's not there's a lack of purpose or lack of fulfillment. Something's not clicking. So I hired them, and their whole thing was, all right, we'll do three things. We'll do thought work, which I guess is Byron Katie type stuff, like cognitive, but CBT in a way, energy work, which is a bit sort of more out there, clearing past life contracts and out there stuff, fields. Yeah. And then plant work. And so we, the thought work was whatever, it was pretty normal. But then we did this plant session where we had, this is in Thailand, not in Australia, but we had I went to their place. We had mushroom chocolates, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and which, for people who don't know, is like a 4 to 6 hour kind of journey. And so I'm with these two people. It's a married couple, Cecile and Misha, that was their name. And the whole idea was, all right, we're going to clear a bunch of things. We're going to, they kept saying my heart was closed, all these different things. And somewhere after we start, maybe an hour in, Misha starts speaking in an alien language. Like
Oh,
it was wild. It sounded legit. I don't think he was making it up.
like in tongues?
Like,
Yeah.
just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was wild. And he's like, we need to go inside because it's getting too noisy and I don't know what the neighbors are going to say. So we go inside. I lie down on this mattress and I've got Misha on one side, Cecile on the other. And he starts doing some kind of energy work. He's like looking, I've never done Reiki, but I guess it's like this, where he's kind of scanning my energy field with his hands. He's not touching me, but sort of, maybe 10 centimeters off my body, sort of scanning, looking for stuff, I guess, meant to be clearing past life contracts and getting rid of implants. There's a whole list of things in that whole energy world that people believe in.
Yeah.
And at some point, it seems like he's wrapping up and he's obviously, it seems like he's communicating or engaging with some kind of being in a non-physical arena, another dimension or another planet, pretty out there stuff. And then he's just about to wrap up and then he's like, oh, like he just caught something, like he just spotted something. And he starts chatting away like he's on the phone, talking in his alien language. So it was wild. And and then he's like, oh, like he's discovered this really big thing about me. And over the next probably few minutes, the next little while, he starts saying basically that that I committed genocide in a past life. I killed 20 million people.
Sure.
2 million of them deserved it. So 18 million were innocent. And therefore, because of that, it's not that my heart's closed. It's I've got 18 million magic locks on my power. So now that's why I can't access my power. And then so he starts basically negotiating away, how do we get this released? We need to get John, he's changed, blah, blah, blah. And she, that's right. Yeah. So then she's trying to work out a deal, like he's literally negotiating with these people. It didn't happen on Earth. So I can't, that's convenient, right? It's in a different planet somewhere.
Sure.
And this is while we're on mushrooms. So, you're a bit open psychologically and emotionally.
Yeah.
And then he, at some point, part of the deal was he had to like transmute all of the, something about feeling the pain of all these deaths as a way to unlock the locks or something like that.
Sure.
And then as well, his wife, Cecile, she's sitting next to me and she's like, well, she starts giving me some kind of advice. And then these beings go, well, if they can somehow pick up that she's talking to me. And then they say something like, well, if she agrees to be his teacher, we'll agree to release him from the locks. And so they did some kind of multidimensional deal thing and they agreed to release the locks. But then it was, well, John's not fully ready yet. So we'll unlock them on the provision that he behaves in a certain way, basically. And then we sort of wrapped this whole thing up. With Misha at one point, he had to she had to feel the pain apparently of all these deaths. And he's writhing away for, I don't know how long, like he's being tortured, like looking at me dead in the eye at the same time. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I think I was just doing some deep breathing and staying quite relaxed. And then we go outside, we start chatting about it. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to ask a lot of questions. I can be quite skeptical of especially stuff like this. So I'm asking all kinds of questions and that doesn't really make them very happy. So she's calling me arrogant and I realize now shaming me basically for being skeptical. Rather than engaging in a right way. So anyway, so this happens. And then there was other elements when my girlfriend was working with them and it's a very complicated situation. Her and this woman had a weird mother-daughter thing going on.
Sure.
It's quite messed up. So I walked away from this is back in October 2018, not really thinking anything had gone wrong. I was like, well, I don't know if I believe it, but I didn't think there'd been any boundaries crossed at this point. Like I was like, nothing, it's all whatever. Like I can just take it or leave it, whatever. These people are nice enough. Like we still kept having lunch with them. And then it was 3 months later. I think my dad mentioned at some point. I told him about it.
Yeah.
This is in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so I spoke to my dad. I only told a few people about it because it was so crazy that they're going to think I'm crazy for even going into a situation like this, which was a bit of a red flag. But I told my dad back in Australia and he goes, look, I don't think you understand how serious this is. If they told this to someone who was a bit weaker, you could say mentally or emotionally, they could walk away and commit suicide. If someone was in a really dark spot already and then that came out, it's just like, you need to understand that this is not a little thing, what they've just done to you. He was furious, I found out later. But he didn't really show it very much on the phone when I chatted to him. I think he was letting me figure it out. so that happened. So I'd heard that, and that was in the first few weeks afterwards. And I was a bit annoyed, but at this point, one of the crucial parts was me thinking my issues with it are just my issues. Like if I'm angry, like, oh, it's obviously I'm just projecting. It's the whole, oh, it's just the mirror. They haven't done anything wrong. It's obviously my fault. I was taking too much responsibility.
Right.
And then January, 3 months later, rolls around, and my sister starts doing somatic experiencing one-on-ones with a lady you trained, I think. I can't remember her name. She might have been Kiwi in Sydney. It's a really small world.
She was probably at the training I was at. I wasn't training people, but I was helping facilitate that training.
Because I mentioned your name to my sister. She asked her lady about it, and she knew you. So anyway, cool. My sister started doing that, and then I was doing some TRE at the time, and then Googled.
For the record, that's tension release exercise tray.
Yeah, you do some exercises to activate like the body shaking mechanism, which you've talked about, right? In that polar bear and all that stuff.
Yeah. For those that don't know what that is, just so.
Yeah. So I looked that up. I was already doing it, but I looked up TRE somatic experiencing. That led me to an article from Seth about why TRE is not the best kind of thing to do, which made a lot of sense, which then led me to your 21-day thing.
Yeah.
I started doing that. And that was when I was like, holy shit, I'm fucking furious about some, that was when it started coming in.
Mm.
The anger, because I realized the anger that I was feeling was not like my problem. It was not a thing that I just had to release. It was because a boundary had been crossed with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been two emotions. It was anger and sadness, because sadness of realizing, I think they played a role. I've now broken up with that girl. And I think there's a bunch of shit they did to undermine our relationship and get in the way. But so there's a lot of sadness going, that they have, similar to my parents got divorced when I was 7. It's very messy. The church was involved. And I was like, somehow I've become dad. This woman that I'm with is my mom. And now these two people are the church, because the church got very involved in my parents' divorce in a really messed up way. It's just like somehow I've recreated a similar kind of situation. And these two coaches who I trusted are now more or less in a way taking my girlfriend away from me, who I, really loved. And so there's a lot of sadness with that, and then a lot of rage. And so that was like the introduction into the somatic work.
Wow.
That was where it started.
I want to hear more, but it is interesting how when we get open to this level of somatic stuff, and you see that pattern, like with your past girlfriend and those two, how it mimicked your childhood. It's like we often talk about that in terms of people getting into the same injuries or accidents, like physical accidents over and over again, but that interrelational trauma, stress can keep getting played out in these interesting dynamics with groups of people. So anyway, I think that's probably more common than people realize. They just might not be able to see it in that pattern without the somatic lens, if that makes sense.
Well, it's like didn't they call it reenactment or something like that, where you reenact the previous trauma, not in exactly the same way.
Yeah, it's like you're revisiting the patterns.
Yeah. And I mean, I've gotten to some of the root of this, which then leads to more anger, which we can get into if you want to hear the whole story. But I think I've gotten pretty close to the root of why I got caught up with, why I was vulnerable to those kinds of people in the first place.
So what do you think it is?
With the somatic
we go right to the kill. What do you think it is?
Well, just some more context with these people. When I confronted them in January, once I realized how angry I was like, I got to talk to these people. I got to let them know how I'm feeling. So I did. And was like, we need to talk about this. Like, I really just don't think the ceremony we did was very good, but I have some questions and blah, blah. And she's like, oh, well, basically gaslighted me. And I didn't realize this at the time, but it was like, oh, sounds like you're having some challenges with your thoughts and your emotions. If you want to get on the phone and talk about that so you can work it out, like, that's cool. But we're not going to talk about the ceremony, like we'll talk about what you're thinking about it and what you feel about it, but we're not going to, she basically, don't question us. You're the one with the problem. And I didn't realize it at first, and then started opening up to some close friends about what had happened. And he's like, dude, she's gaslighting you. It's like, oh, what's that? I've never heard of that before. And went online, read some stuff. And like, again, it was another penny dropping of like, oh my God, this is what's been happening for months. And I haven't had a word or a concept for it. And so once I had the visibility on it, that was yeah, that was kind of what led. I was like, all right, she's not playing ball. I broke up with them, basically cut them out of my life, which made things very difficult with my girlfriend at the time, her being best friends with them. But anyway, so the gaslighting and this, like I realized a lot of what they were doing was guilt, like guilt tripping, gaslighting, manipulation, undermining me. It's really the start of a cult, which I went down this rabbit hole last year of reading about cults and gurus and mind control.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is break down your existing personality, break down who you think you are right now, so you feel like an empty shell of a person, and then install a new operating system, basically. And I think that's what they're intentionally. Well, I'm pretty sure it's intentional. These people, they seem to be they're smart, but they're not that smart. So anyway, so this was happening, and so I'm like, how did I like get caught up in this? You know, like I grew up going to church. I got out of that. I got very scientific and skeptical and atheistic for a while there, and I was like, I'm a marketer, I'm a copywriter, like I'm pretty up to, pretty good with persuasion and marketing and influence and all of that. How did I get sucked into this? Like, what made me so vulnerable? Why could I not see the problem? And I've been living with dad. So I came back to Australia last year, and then stayed with mum for a bit when COVID blew up. And then, because I hadn't been in Australia for 10 years properly. So spent some time with the family. So now I've been living with dad for a while. And part of that was knowing people like, oh, it's so hard to live with your family. And to me, that's the point, because then I can work on stuff, work on the issues, resolve things. And so then living with dad has then showed me, because I can see elements of his behavior, which would then trigger me, which now I can go, oh, this is a pattern that's been going on my entire life. And one thing I've noticed in him is a kind of very common, I think, when someone gets insecure, basically feeling shame, I guess in this work, when they start to feel a sense of shame about themselves, they will then, resort to guilt tripping, gaslighting, minimization. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, one thing he used to say was, I've done so much for you. And this is like, anytime we were critical of anything. And then so I started to realize that when you do this to a child, the child then goes, what I think and feel is not okay. Like, it's not safe to have the feelings I do. And so then he then projects his shame onto me. I start carrying his shame, which then creates the opening, the vulnerability for people like this, to these coaches, to take advantage of. So I started to connect all the dots. And this was partly coming up because I've been living with dad, and I've been able to observe these patterns still going on. Yeah. And then, so then I've been trying to work this out for months. This hasn't been a quick thing. And now I've been, I've been working with Seth, and I went to Seth going, like, your husband one-on-one.
My husband, for those who don't know.
He's amazing. He's amazing. Yeah. So working with him one-on-one, and I go in thinking, I've got this thing with shame. Like, why do I feel like, whatever. And at some point he starts to go, I don't think it's shame, man. I think it's anger. I don't really know how he knew that. Maybe there's something he could see.
Oh, we just know.
Interesting. So he said that, and at first it didn't really sit right. Like, I didn't really get it. A few weeks went by, and I had a conversation with someone else about speaking my truth, and I was like, why do I feel like I can't speak my truth? And anyway, went into a session with him one day. He goes, I think it's anger. Let's explore that. So he gets me to do this exercise of ha in the solar plexus 4 or 5, not many times.
Yeah.
And then just track the sensation. And because I've done both of your courses and watched a ton of your videos, like I've gotten the hang of this work a bit better now. So it's like, just track the sensation, let your breath do whatever it wants to do.
Yeah. And
I'm tracking it, and it's like, first the breath is normal, and it starts increasing its pace. You probably know all this familiar to you, but new for other people. But then the breath starts increasing, and the sensation is moving up my chest, starts in my solar plexus, and it's like it's slowly moving up through the chest and then into the throat. And as this is happening, my breath is getting more and more growly. So like, instead of it speeds up first, and then eventually it's and as it moves up, it's getting into like like I'm choking.
Yeah.
And then eventually it lands on the face, and my face is not on fire, but like the whole face is just buzzing. And then I was doing the whole like, I was thinking about the stuff from the course about like engaging your biological mechanism of aggression. So like snarling and squinting and like the whole
oh yeah, all of it.
And so I was doing that. It was in a park, just a random park in a tiny little town. I was traveling around in a camper van. So I'm in a park, in my little camper van, and there's people turning up for lunch. And they couldn't see me, but they would have. I'm like growling and screaming away in this van.
That's so great.
So
Call the cops, something's happening.
yeah, so I don't know, like in between laughs. So that went off like 40 minutes. And
So can I share something?
yeah.
So I wanted to, so hold that thought because I want to continue.
Yeah.
But just for those listening who are super new to this work, because you've done both my programs and you've really stuck to the work, which is great, which allowed you to track that that he had you do. So he asked you to do a stimulation to your system that was contrived, right? You followed it, you followed his lead, but then everything after that was just you tracking sensation. There was no script of what to do next. You just kept tracking and tracking, and the next thing and the next thing, and then that's where that all came out, right? Just so that people get that this wasn't a breath work practice or an anger practice.
Yeah. That's one of the fascinating things. Yeah, it's not like if you go and you talk about this, the cathartic release, go outside and scream your head off. Like it doesn't. And now I can really see what that means, because it's like if I just scream, but I'm not tapping into that charge, it's not going to do anything. It'll wear me out, and maybe it gets a little bit, but it's not really going to do that much.
Totally.
This is like, but there's an element of maybe it's not really a script, but like once it started showing on the face, like I'd already done the training on anger, and I was already familiar with like the biological stuff. All right, if this is anger, I need to engage that anger reflex biologically to get it happening.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's partly like it does seem about learning to read your body. So then you can give it like when it wants to like growl, like knowing when it wants to growl, so you can like let the growl happen. Because if you didn't know that the growl was there, you might hold it back without even knowing you're holding it back.
100%.
So, I mean, the biggest thing because I tell everyone about this stuff now, but one of the biggest things is being like the breath, like learning to let the breath do whatever it wants to do, which is a bit of an art. It's hard, but it's weird that it's hard. But yeah, just because that's what then allows the stress response to play out, right?
100%. And your story about, growing up with your dad and that pattern and this is so classic, is little kid wants to express what they want to express, and then for whatever reason they don't, and there's so many ways that doesn't happen. But it's like you're asking a little mini volcano, to hold in all of its fire and all of its beauty and all of its sparks, and then it's just held in there. I was just walking a couple of weeks ago. I shared this in class the other day, but I was just doing some movement and waking myself up by the ocean, and I could hear a kid and his father playing on the grass, and they were playing a bit of hide and go seek with a tree, which is awesome. And then I heard the little boy say something along the lines of, "Daddy, I want to touch or hug the tree." I can't quite remember what it was, but it was something involving him wanting to touch the tree and stay with the tree. And Dad didn't let him. And so he didn't pull him because they were separated, and he started to walk away, which is a sense of, well, I'm going to leave you if you don't obey. But sooner or later the kid followed, but then he just broke down and just started screaming and crying. Yeah. Which was good for him. He didn't shove it in, but it was that like, damn you, I wanted to hug the tree. Let me kiss the tree, let me do it. If that could have just been allowed, it would have been maybe 30 seconds. Ask him how it feels, and then he probably would have just walked away without that needing to burst out. So I think people just have often no clue how much of that occurs when we're young. We have no memory of it, right? And then these patterns show up, as you experienced with this couple in Thailand. Yeah, like, something's not right here.
Yeah, well, part of the lesson has been like that situation with the tree. Like a lot of people, even if someone could remember that, there's this tendency to play it down. Like, oh, it's not that big a deal. It was just a tree. Like, just why am I so upset about it? Like, why do I have this big issue with, and a lot of this work seems to be about going like, if it felt like a big deal, like it was a huge deal. And even like this, because it's been me trying to wrap my head around it. Like my dad's a great dad. Like by all accounts, he's like really, I think he's way above average. Especially he went through one of the worst childhoods I've ever heard of. The whole satanic ritual abuse things, so like crazy stuff. And he's doing so well despite all of that. So he's a great dad. And yet I've had to like come to terms with, as much as I love him and think he's great, that like guilt tripping and gaslighting and minimization and this kind of like, and it was very much a teaser. That was, I think he also tried to make, lighten situations up with humor, which was probably sometimes good, sometimes also destructive because it's invalidating. And a lot of that, on the one hand, was like, what's the big deal? Like, it's just a small thing. Like, why? But I've had to kind of look back and go, no, it's a huge deal. Because when you do that to a kid, and when you do that repeatedly over years and years and years, it warps their sense of who they are and their trust in themselves. And that's what creates it's really the shame. It's his shame that gets passed on. Because then you start to associate, if I express this thing, I'm not good enough. And that becomes baked into your personality. And then later in life, you're like, you just doubt, you doubt yourself and you think you're being rational.
Yeah.
And it's just programming. It's just like fucked up wiring, basically. It's not yours. Yeah.
I want to keep going with your story, but it's interesting. When I was in high school, back in the day when you still went to libraries, and picked out books and all that, I remember being in the library. I always looked for new books. And for whatever reason, I came across a book called Satan's Children. Mm-hmm. And it's written by a psychiatrist named Robert Mayer. I actually found it and I have a copy now. But that was, I don't know what compelled me, but the book fascinated me. I was probably 17, 16, and I read front to cover. It was like a thick, bloody book on satanic ritual abuse to children. And it was all about what we now call dissociative identity disorder, which was then multiple personality disorder. Holy moly. For whatever reason, I chose that book as my first book to read around psychology and trauma. It was eye-opening, not only, what is possible for humans to do to other humans, especially children, but how the psyche and the somatic physiology protects the kiddo from remembering all the things that occurred. And it kind of is it was an interesting initiation, because having been my first exposure, and then having worked with some clients who have lived through this and survived it and are thriving now, you kind of go, wow, humans are bloody strong despite what has happened to so many of them and us.
Yeah.
So I had to just share that, because it is a great book. And what was unfortunate is when I went into the Amazon reviews or wherever, it was really sad. There were a lot of people not believing the stories.
Yeah.
Saying, this isn't possible. You're just doing this to get publicity for your practice. And I was like, oh my God, how could you say that? But it was plain as day in the comments. And I don't know if that's people's uncomfortableness with the topic. Anyway, wanted to share that.
Well, first of all, that's a wild book to like initiation of all the books you could have read. That's not the most extreme book you could go into. Mm-hmm. I mean, because my dad hasn't even told me most of it, but what he has told me, I've never, I haven't read any of his books, so I don't know the scale of where it goes, but I mean, but by the sound of it, he's been through it all. So it's probably not worth probably not good to get into it here, no. But even like I have trouble, like if I'm honest, like I support him and I guess I try to believe it, but in a way it's like, it's so out there and it's so crazy, and it lends itself into the QAnon and the various conspiracy theories that he's very into, and there's a lot of, I think, BS basically, and that like in conspiracy theories as well, maybe there's truth there, but it's like, he's my dad and he's been through it, and I struggle with it still. I struggle to like, is this even real? Like how much of this do I believe? Is it possible to exaggerate or to false memories kinds of a thing, or people read articles and that I don't know. So I struggle with it. I don't, because I have no reference point for it. I haven't been through it. I never met his dad for obvious reason, because his dad was the one doing it. So I just have no reference for it. And I don't read the news, so
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to comprehend such evil and injustice done to especially children. Not that an older human isn't terrible, but innocent children is tough. And I have stories that my mother's told of sex slavery when she was growing up in the Philippines, during the Second World War, and being at risk for being taken by the Japanese and sold. And it's like I've heard it, that level of atrocity. And perhaps because I've heard those stories so young, it just lands and oh, sure. I can't believe I'm not even shocked by this, but okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's an interesting one. And so kudos to your father for being such a good dad, despite the little things, right? That you're still working on. Is he aware of the work you're doing? I'm curious. Does he know that that you processed that anger thing with Seth the other day, or do you keep that kind of private?
Well, no, we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talked about this, which is a good story in a second, but I think because of what he's went through, and he's worked through dissociative identity disorder. So we've had these conversations for as long as I've been exposed to all these kinds of things. He's been seeing counselors and therapists for his as long as I can remember anyway, as long as I've been alive. And so he's really been dedicated to working on himself, and it shows. Yeah. And so I think that's created a kind of culture in our family where, probably partly the reason why I'm so passionate about this, I can see the value in it. My sister's doing it as well. She's been through her own abuse, which came out the last couple of years, which she was processing with the somatic lady I mentioned before. So there's a lot of trauma in the family. I don't think I went through any that I can remember at the moment, any sexual or physical abuse. My sister did, my dad did. There's a chance that there's a lot of trauma in the family. Yeah. So there's just been this also, luckily, this real culture of, like working on it. Like my mom and my dad, neither of them really drink alcohol very much. They don't do drugs, not really recreationally anyway. So they've got their issues, but they're far more functional than a lot of people who go through some of these things, which is, but anyway, so the story about the dad with the anger, right?
Yeah.
So after I had that session with Seth, the next day, I was so angry. Like
I wanted to follow up. How did that happen? What happened after knowing that you've done all this solid work in foundation? You got the sounds out, the growls.
Yeah.
Tell us.
I mean, I don't. Later that day, I think it gradually started to build after that session with Seth, which was a Wednesday, and I was on a road trip at the time, and over the next sort of day or two, I realized how angry I was, like furious with my dad for some of these things. Because I could finally, I guess what had happened is I'd unblocked the anger channel, that aggression pathway in the body. And so I didn't just think about it, like it was visceral. And I remember trying to meditate, and because I was, I'd go through periods where I meditate every day. So I'm meditating and I'm like, why am I feeling so anxious? What's going on? Like, it's like my heart's racing and all this. And eventually I'm like, I don't think I'm anxious. I think I'm angry. And like, because I'm not expressing the anger, it's going in and becoming anxiety. And that helped me realize it becomes self-directed. Like I then direct it at myself, or I'm frustrated because I'm not making enough money or whatever it is. And so angry. And I realized I got to talk to Dad. I got to tell him. I've got to express this to him. I felt like that was, and by confronting him, which like scared the shit out of me, because I think confronting your parents, they have this natural power advantage. I think it's one of the hardest things you can do. Yeah. But then that to me was like, if I can do this, like it's going to make, like this is the root of that vulnerability that got me caught up with those coaches. If I can do this, if I can face this thing, this dragon, whatever you want to do it, it's going to make me so much stronger and more powerful. There's a real sense of getting my power back. So, I was like, Dad, we got to talk. And we planned it for the weekend. I was like, it might be a bit triggering. We actually had a family brunch on Saturday morning. And I would usually like hang out and chat and be social and friendly and everything. And I went in and I could feel I guess I felt myself going into shutdown. It was like, I can't, because I'm so angry right now, I can't really express this at breakfast. It's not the right place. And so
Yeah.
it's like I had to shut it down. I could feel myself numbing to it. So I
Mhm.
walk in and 5 minutes later, I'm like, I got to go, guys. I'll see you later. And I
Mhm.
walk out and then I go for a walk. It's raining. I burst into tears actually, and then send a video message to my mom about some of the realizations I've been having, just to I wanted to share that with her, which is really cool.
Uh-huh.
Been getting better at like, that whole vulnerability thing. So like not trying to hide the emotion, really trying to open up and
Oh,
share
good
it
for
with
you.
people.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then dad comes back. It's Saturday, I don't know, 1 o'clock or something. And we sit down and we start chatting, and I basically just lay it all out there. Kind of what I've done here. I wasn't easy on him. It was like, look, I think the root of why I got caught up in that is because of your basically toxic behavior. It's still going on today. It's, robbed me of these different things in life. And it needs to change. If we're going to have a relationship, it needs to stop. It's that simple. Like, it just can't happen anymore. And so it's really trying to like make it crystal clear that if he wants to have a relationship with me, he's going to treat me the right way. So it went pretty hard. I was like, don't interrupt me. Just let me say my piece. So I do that. He's fine at first. And then I think towards the end of my little spiel, which probably went on for 10 or 20 minutes,
Sure.
he's affected by it. And so he starts to talk. He's like bottom lips trembling.
Oh,
He goes into that space of, I've really tried so hard. And and I could see it, and he started to break down, which I've never seen him break down into
oh.
tears like that. So then he gets up. It's like, I can't handle this. I've got to take a break. He goes to his bedroom.
Yeah.
I guess cries for a bit. It comes back out and kind of says his own part. And then I start crying because I can see his pain. It's like balancing these two things where he's been through so much and he's doing so well and he's tried so hard and he's done a lot of things right. And yet there's some things that he didn't do right and he's still not doing right. And I think he really struggles with that because it's shame, really. It's shame that I've been carrying for him, that he's still carrying from his dad and from what he went through. And I don't think he's able to fully connect with that yet because he actually admitted it that day. He's like, look, the reason, because I told him, I was like, you say you don't do shame and guilt as though they're bad emotions, but I'm like, that you're disconnecting from them, and that's valuable information that's basically getting in the way of our relationship. But he said the reason he doesn't do guilt and shame is because in the satanic ritual cult stuff, they use shame to control you. They try and get you to do things, very violent things to other people that then they blame you for, and then they're controlling you with shame. So it's like, the reason I don't do shame is because I don't want to play into their games. And I could see this. I can feel his pain, and then I'm crying. He's crying. We're crying together. And part of it was just also seeing it's just the pain in the family, like the trauma. You could say the lineage. There's a lot of it on both sides of the family, like I said, and just kind of grieving that. And so we actually. So I actually going into this conversation, I was thinking I might have to move out, and me and dad aren't going to speak for a while, and it's going to be a complete falling out. In the end, though, he comes around and we give each other a hug and we keep chatting a bit, and we kind of, all right, well, how can we work this out? Because there's some things he was doing that were bothering me at the time, which was really the main issue, not the past stuff, but your behavior. You need the behavior, your present behavior needs to change. And so we talked it out, worked out some things, and we basically made up. And then a week after, I got a bit angry again. Something happened, relatively small thing, but I was feeling that same agitation.
Yeah.
I didn't want to express it because it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And then I, ended up, look, I'm feeling a bit angry about this thing that happened. Just communicated it, and we worked it out in 2 minutes. Just talking about it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And so dad's very much, he does all this work himself. He doesn't do this. He's done somatic stuff, I think, with people, but it's a real testament, I think, to him that he was able to handle that so well. Because I was like a few years ago, or the dad I remember from growing up, he wouldn't have been able to handle that at all. And like he took it like a champ, basically. And now I feel closer with him, more connected, more intimate, because there's more vulnerability there. It's wonderful. It's really, that's awesome. And he gets it. He's like, look, I know you needed to get that out. I get it. So
I think, thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Dad, for playing a part. I did a piece of vlog a month or two ago. I'm losing track of time, but it was all around why you need to be very, not you, but generally speaking, one needs to be very cautious when confronting family, when the family of origin is the cause of your was the abuser, the perpetrator, the trauma, the toxic environment, the gaslighting. Because if they haven't done the work, doesn't have to be 100% perfect work and the exact same work, but if they have not done any self-work, any reflection, if they don't understand those patterns and how they travel through the lineage, and you drop this bomb on them, it can be not only re-traumatizing for you, the person trying to find peace and connection and vulnerability and work on this, but the parent or the sister or the grandparent or whatever, they'll just either deflect and push back more and get more in survival, or they'll shut down and walk away and stonewall the situation. And then that hurts also from the person trying to talk. So when you said that your father has been doing therapy, he knows the therapy, like, it's like, okay, that's a green light to play with that. And I just say that for those listening, like, oh, okay, I'm going to just confront don't do that unless the person has the capacity to allow and he did a great job. He left the room, he processed, you knew how to let that happen.
Yeah.
That image of like, don't you leave this room, you stay right here. It's such a common thing with couples when they're fighting. It's like, no, they need a break. And if you're uncomfortable with that break, then you got something to work on. Right. And that's where understanding the physiology, as you've learned, is so important, because you can just track it and you can see it in him, the lip quivering, and you're like, oh, this is going into a very strong chord.
Yeah. It was beautiful. I mean, all the stuff you teach, right? Like the orienting is like, that to me is the 80-20 of this. I tell people, it's like, that's the main thing. If you can do that and you can feel your feet on the ground and look around and do that in a tense situation, like that's what releases stuff. So then he goes out and I felt really chill. I got really sad watching him.
Yeah.
That sad for him, or maybe just feeling or empathizing with his pain. I was proud of myself for doing it. Like I don't think I'd said anything I shouldn't have said. And I was just really honest, even if it was hard. It was direct, very blunt. But I wouldn't recommend it for even with the amount of work he's done, and we already have a very good. Even before that, we had a great relationship for years.
No,
we talked about almost everything. Yeah. Even with all of that, I was still not sure how he was going to take it. So this other, I went through a period of, after that anger, I was like, maybe I need to make a list of everyone I'm angry with in my life and just go down the list. And I don't think that's necessarily going to be that helpful, because a lot of them, they're not going to get it. It's going to trigger them. And even if it doesn't hurt me, I don't think it's necessarily going to be helpful for them at this stage. So it's like, and I think he was a lot of the bundle of this was going back to him. So the fact that that's released, and I feel lighter. I mean, even afterwards, actually, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
I could see it in the mirror. Like there was a sense of light, like I'd let something go, and he could see it. And I felt it as well. Like I just felt, and I still feel it now. There's like like lighter, like you carry all that stuff, like the amount of that rage, like you're carrying that for so long, 30 years. You let that go.
Can I make an observation? Just because, I mean, this is the first time we've talked, even though you've been throughout, right? But I've seen the video you did to help promote SBSM, which is a little different when you're on show, you're trying to say the right thing and think, but the feeling I get from you is, it's like there's a big backpack that's not on you anymore. Like you're not holding something up in your shoulders, in your face. There's like a sense of just not having to be perfect and smile and just like let's just let it. Does that make sense? I'm kind of being, like a little less guard. It's like the guard isn't on in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, to use the somatic, like it's like when you have a parent like that, well, any kid or anyone in your life like that, it doesn't feel safe to just express what, just be authentic, basically. Yeah, I guess it's the fawn, as I understand, it's like the fawn response or the people pleasing. You then modify who you are to fit what people want of you. Totally. So, because then they're not going to yell at you or anything like that. So you start to, you confront that issue, you start to release that. There's less of a, because it's really that lack of safety in me, for example, that caused me to say, always smile, trying to smile and be nice and charming, all that sort of stuff. That's not really about right now. That's about what happened before. And so to go and confront and resolve that issue with dad, the anger, the whole thing, it's like that coping mechanism. it's not needed anymore. So
That's pretty raw what you guys worked with.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
So good.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a little bit about, you had mentioned, if we go back to 18, you started meditating.
Yeah.
You got into, you were playing with the plant medicines and that weird stuff happened. And then shortly, I know this is like a big chunk of time through your 20s, I guess. Was there a moment when you started getting into, what was the moment when you started getting into the somatic work when you're like, okay, meditation is good and I believe in it myself, I do bits of it, but you were like, okay, this is not getting me to this other element. Kind of like you said, you were trying to meditate the other day or whenever it was a few weeks ago, and you felt this anxiety, but it wasn't anxiety, it was the anger.
Yeah.
Anything that you would want to speak to around how you uncovered that and how you work with meditation now in a way that's not pushing past the physiology, but working with the physiology?
Mm. Um,
For those that are wondering, should I keep meditating? What would John say?
well, I'll come back to it in a minute, but I'm actually going this. I keep going off meditation because I think it's making me go into more freeze, and maybe it's because disassociation runs in the family because of the dissociative identity. Dad's very dissociative, and so obviously I've picked up some amount of that. There's a skill or tendency, and so I can go very deep in meditation, especially when you mix it with plant medicine. I can drop into these very basically mystical states, or states of enlightenment, whatever you want to call them. Which I've now begun to wonder, is that actually real, or am I just highly, highly, highly disassociated in that moment, which feels like a mystical experience, but so anyway, so that's to say
you're
that
in that now.
I'm not sure about meditation anymore. Yeah, I'm like, for all these gurus out there who, they're all about presence and it's all about the world's an illusion and don't worry about your body, don't identify all this sort of stuff. Maybe they've done so much meditation. They're so disconnected from their human experience. And that's where they're coming from. They're not actually evolved or whatever it is. And I don't know, maybe there's some number of them which are like that, which is probably why then they can justify a lot of these gurus' terrible behavior. But anyway, yeah. So back to the question. I think for me, it started with 2015. I actually did my first ayahuasca ceremony, which was very not much happened. But then around that time as well, I started reading the presence process, and I mentioned the ayahuasca there too, even though nothing happened because I don't know how much of that necessarily played a role in helping me to find this book. You just don't know how all the factors come together. But found this book, The Presence Process, from a friend, which was all about basically being present and then working with, it's like inner child sort of stuff. It's very similar to the somatic stuff.
Sure.
Or the power of now, being present, letting trauma, but he didn't have the right language or the models or the scientific understanding of the nervous system, but the same basic idea. You let charges come up, you be present with it, it releases, you get healthier, basically. You make better decisions, you have a better life. Started doing that and was like, I think that got me, I guess, keyed into the work, whereas meditation was just about being perfectly still. This was like, oh, there's like stuff in me that I need to release, and that's what's getting in my way. So that was kind of the first foray. That led to the surrender experiment with Michael Singer and the Untethered Soul. I think you quoted him in one of your emails. And then that was when around that time, this a few years ago now, got back into psychedelics, which those kind of books, that world sort of goes very well with plant medicine and psychedelics, or they kind of lean on each other. So that was where that was kind of what drew me into it, which was 2015. And then it wasn't until the January when I found like your course and the whole somatic stuff was like, oh my God, this is exactly what all these other people are trying to teach and explain, but explained a million times better. Like, it's like,
thanks. That's a great compliment.
You're a great teacher. You really are. I tell everyone this. You're an amazing teacher. The way you do the theory and then you do the practice, it's amazing. It's really, really, really good. I recommend everyone does your courses.
You're my biggest fan. Thank you.
But there's this real thing where like the presence process and the power of now and the surrender experiment and all these different spiritual books about being present, they're talking about the same thing you are, or the Peter Levine and the whole trauma people are, but they don't have the language of the nervous system. They don't have this fight, flight, freeze, fawn stuff. They don't have the vagus nerve. They don't have any of that. They've just got be present. In Hinduism and Buddhism, they call them samskaras or vasanas, the charges. But I think they're all talking about the same thing, whereas the somatic stuff, there's so much more nuance. So, or, it's kind of like if you talk about being present and working through and your stuff or doing your work, like the presence process and the power of now and all the standard run of the mill spiritual books about this kind of stuff is like looking at a 32 pixel photo, like a really low def image.
Yeah.
And then you go to the somatic stuff where now you have to, instead of just being present, you've got, orienting and multitasking your awareness and pendulation and titration. And it's just far, far more sophistication and nuance for the same concept. And now you're going from like a low def photo to ultra high definition Blu-ray or something like that. And now we can orient to the territory a lot more and navigate it a lot better. And then of course make faster progress. So I kind of sum it up going like, if all that standard present stuff, spiritual stuff is like a grade 1 or 2 or 3 or something like that, this somatic thing, what you teach, what the books, all of it, university level, it's like the same thing, but way better.
Yeah, that's interesting how you break that down. Because I had a question today come through on an Instagram post. Someone was like, I still don't understand the difference between orienting and mindfulness. And I don't know if this person has any experience. I don't know if they've tried one of my downloads that's free on my site. They probably haven't because they won't know the difference. But I hear a lot of folks say, who are more in the spiritual world, and I have nothing against the spiritual world, like go for it. It's very important. I love all that other stuff, but for someone to say, just sit there, process it, feel it, and let it pass, we're too complex. And if we haven't been taught how to self-regulate, if you know how to self-regulate because your childhood was perfect, and I mean, whose childhood was perfect? I haven't met anybody yet. Maybe like a bear cub living in the woods, their childhood was perfect, but humans, it's a little different. So it's like to just say to someone, you just got to feel the fear, sit there and clear it. Us humans don't usually have that skill set. And so a lot of it is nice verbiage, a lot of these books, and it's lovely reading. And it's like, yep, makes sense. And then you go to sit to meditate and all you feel is anxiety. And it's like, well, this isn't what they told me I would feel. I guess I just have to sit and feel it and strain and try to shift it. But what a person might not realize is they have to start growling, or they have to start looking at the sky and being like, here I am now. But it's so hard to, you just can't even teach that in one session. As you've learned, it takes weeks and months to get all the little pieces on board. A colleague, teacher of mine, I once said to him, Stephen Hoskinson, used to be an SE trainer, he does his own thing now, but we were talking and I said, and he said the mind body world need to be refined. So there needs to be a refinement in the teachings in the mind body world. And I would even go so far to say there needs to be a whole word that's different. It is, because it's not just nervous system work, it's not just somatic work. It's not mind body, because you're bringing in the environment, you're bringing in the thoughts, you're bringing in the memories, you're bringing in the somatic stuff. So if anybody has a word, let me know, because it's sort of like, I don't even think it's wordless in a sense, right? John, what do you say?
Well, yeah, I'm actually doing some business and marketing. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm like doing some courses at the moment I want to get into this whole world in some, start helping other people do it. And so that's what I've been trying to work out is how do you explain it? I think the biggest challenge with this stuff is, especially for, as a guy, like so when I try and explain this there's a lot of women out there. You're a woman. I've noticed, I don't know, you probably noticed as well, a lot of the people in your group are women. Yeah. People who do the courses. I don't know what the percentage is, but
it's high.
Yeah, I haven't checked it, but it looks like 90, 95, 99% are women, which makes sense because it's a good touchy-feely. It feels maybe insubstantial or impractical or whatever to men. And so, someone, or like it needs to be explained. And like you said, we need a word. Like it's not meditation, but it's similar. It's like meditation version 2 is, it's meditation.
Yeah.
No, it's like meditation, but better. Like because I've been emailing my list at the moment, which has nothing to do with somatic stuff. It's a marketing list of marketers and copywriters. I've been emailing them anyway, because just to practice. And I keep trying to figure it out. Like, well, your nervous system's like a car, or it's like, meditation upgraded. It's like, I don't know what the best way, like, is it embodiment, grounded, Headspace, that meditation app, Headspace. That's a great name.
It's a great name. It's more than the head.
Yeah. Well, what's the somatic equivalent?
The somatic, the body, because
Yeah,
that's the thing. You say body and people think muscles and skeleton and exercise, but really the body has everything inside of it, because the body is your brain and your nervous system and your behaviors and your memories. But the definition of body isn't understood in that contextual grandiosity, if you want to look at it that way. So
yeah.
I think you should just keep working on that, and we'll come back and let me know in 2 months what you found.
Yeah, still, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the somatic equivalent because that headspace is like, what do you get from doing this out? Well, you get headspace. But with the somatic stuff, to me, like the clicks in. I'm curious what you think about this actually. I think I wanted to ask you about this in the past. The multitasking your awareness, right? When you feel your feet on the ground, you look around, you feel your feet on the ground, and you feel your breath. Those three things. When you do that at the same time, it's like dropping into a different world. There's like a real shift in awareness. Yeah,
Yep.
it's incredible. It's very similar to it's almost like a deep meditative state, but very embodied. Instead of being disassociated, I don't even know how to describe it, but that to me is the key.
Well, from my experience, so for those who don't know what multitasking awareness is, I might say, can you orient and see the room around you? Yes, I can see that. Okay, can you notice your breath? Yes, I can notice that. And then I might say, can you feel your feet on the ground? Yes, I can feel that. But multitasking is all of them at the same time. In addition to being able to notice your movements and all the tensions or non-tensions and thoughts all at the same time without going into like the stress response. And so when someone's brand new, it's like, is that even possible? It's like, yes, it's actually very possible, but it takes practice. From what I've heard in my experience, there is a falling back, and I don't mean a falling back literally, but there's a dropping away of, you're still physical form, you're kinesthetically aware, but it's like you become a hologram that's just there, experiencing every moment as it comes. And it feels almost, if we go into the whole 3D, it's like you're going into a place that's even higher than 5D in that ascension human kind of way, because you're not focused on worry, you're not even focused on sensation, you're just focusing on the true now moment, but without even tracking the now moment. I think personally that is actually what people are looking for when they meditate, is my sense. But the other foundation of knowing how to track the physiology hasn't been taught. And so my sense, John, is a lot of people that are meditating are powering through with their minds and their thoughts, trying to shift the thinking out of thinking, and they don't even know they're not connected to their body.
That's what I've done. I've done it.
Yeah.
And this is like with that multitasking thing, like the meditation I found can disconnect me from, this is becoming more and more obvious lately, like disconnect me from reality, where it makes it a bit harder, or like, what's the point? I think it's a symptom of disassociation actually, but the multitasking thing, it's like, yeah, basically what I want. Like I want to be present in here, but I'm completely functional.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a conversation. I can see that there's sky out there. I can sense that my husband's downstairs. I've got 2 drinks in front of me. I can hear people in our backyard talking about something, but I'm still feeling my feet. I can see my hands moving, and I can tell I have a little tension in the back of my head because I probably need to shift myself, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's this full present awareness. To me, honestly, I think we could say, personally, it's just being human without all the survival baggage attached to us. Because an animal in the wild who's in full moment is fully in the moment, whether they're hunting, whether they're grazing, whether their awareness is on. Whereas we have that, but then we have all the complexities of the culture and society. And so we get trapped out of that presence, but then we have this higher brain that is like a maximal computer processor that we've tried to like meditate it to be calm, but it's like we actually have to let it run its full processing speed, in addition to all the trauma that we've held forever.
Right.
Anyway, it's like,
What even gets like quite strange, like I mean, there's so much we could talk. I feel like we could talk for hours, days.
Yeah.
But one thing that's been big lately has been I guess it's the Feldenkrais, which
Yep.
because I've been really trying to work on this to integrate it. It's just become part of how I live day to day, all the practices you teach. But the Feldenkrais thing, I never know how to say his name, but
Feldenkrais.
Feldenkrais. Okay. I go between Feldenkrais. So like I had moments when I'm like lying on bed or sitting in a chair, and it's like I'm feeling my feet on the ground, feeling my butt, feeling the environment, seeing what's around me, and then I'll be like turning my head really slowly, or just moving my hips a little bit. And when you slow it down, I really realize what you mean. Like you slow it down to the point where someone outside you wouldn't even be able to see the movement.
No.
There's this real profound shift in awareness where I start to go, instead of feeling like I'm in my head and I am my head or brain controlling the rest of the body, it's almost like that, like, because I go looking for where's the source of the movement? Where does that movement start? Like it's moving, but it doesn't seem like it's coming from the head. It's more like there's this real sense of like being, this probably sounds so weird to some people, but being like, I'm not, in a way, not the body is part of me, but it's like I'm not in the body. I'm this field of consciousness, that like an invisible field of consciousness that the body is sitting within. And that field of consciousness can move any part of the body. It's like interfacing with the body, not just through the brain, but through every cell or something like that. So the toe moves from the toe. It doesn't move from the signal doesn't come from the brain. Or maybe a neuroscientist would disprove that, but that's how it feels. And it's
the brain
amazing.
wasn't there, you wouldn't move your toe, but I understand what you're saying, because you need the brain to move the toe.
Yeah.
And you need your spinal cord to connect the nerve signals to the muscles, but it's more than just the brain. I mean, if we look at it in terms of just physics, it's electricity, it's energy. So it's like you're tracking the energy field of how that originates. So you could even track it down to like before the firing of the impulse goes to the axons, to the muscle, there's a preparation, and then you move right. It's
oh yeah, it starts to light up. You do that, and I just imagine you're about to move your leg, but don't move it. Just notice what happens in your body, that kind of stuff. And like, it's wild. Yeah, stuff happens. Like you start to feel there's like a slight activation, almost energetically in that area. And then if I shift it to the other side, it'll be like, oh, I'm going to move the other side now, and you start to trick. It'll start to light up a little bit there.
It's a bit different, or there's a different pattern. Oh yeah, I mean, you could play with that stuff for days.
Yeah. So I'm excited because I think, the goal is to me to become just more and more and more embodied, and like where that just becomes like you said, the default state. You're either, most of the time you're just in that embodied multitasking, feeling my feet on the ground. I'm not thinking, I'm just present, aware.
Doing work. That's the other thing too, right? Like, I mean, that might be a good way for us to start to close this, is like, we still have to be productive members, I believe, productive members of society, and, have a job or whatever it is that you do, or a career, or a passion, or a purpose, or a hobby. But to be able to do those things with that level of awareness is super important. But it sounds like go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we can't all go on meditating caves for our whole life.
Nothing, our children wouldn't be fed. So there'd be some problems there. Someone has to drive the food and till the grass and all that stuff. But it sounds like you're wanting to go in the route of working with people and in that kind of healing somatic space. Is that your next, what's on the horizon as you refine and master this multitasking somatic thing that we don't have a word for?
Well, I've been working as a copywriter and marketer, mainly email marketing, but I mean, all kinds of marketing really, for 10 years more or less. And so, I have that kind of perspective where I look at like what probably holds this whole world back a bit, at least with my friends, the people I know, is the marketing's, well, at least the marketing to the men, for example, like it needs better marketing. And so I don't see myself as being like a Peter Levine or inventing new, maybe I will, come up with some, you just figure it out as you go along. But I see like the value I can add is through communication and marketing and figuring out how to get, because that unlocks the value. There's a whole lot of people which would get so much value out of this, but no one's explained it to them or presented it to them or marketed it basically to them in the correct way. And so I see that's probably where I see my direction going of like trying to, maybe similar to you in a way, but probably in my own way of doing it, but trying to reach a large number of people. I'd probably consider, I've emailed the somatic experiencing people in Australia to ask about the course, because I'm going to build a business in it. I should probably, I'd like to just learn more about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I could see myself doing one-on-ones or like to get experience.
Yeah.
But I think I can help more people by going that whole one-to-many approach. And I see it's at least in the beginning would be more targeting towards men. So then it uses masculine language, it's less flowery.
Definitely.
So that's, yeah. And I'm still like, I'm not really at the, I've got some ideas on like how to market it basically, but I don't know the exact phrasing. I don't have the headspace equivalent of whatever this work is yet.
Yeah.
The closest I've gotten is grounded.
It'll come. My gut sense is when there's more people ready, you will have what it is that needs to be done, whether it's working solo or working with an organization or whatever. It'll come when, 10 years ago, people weren't ready for this kind of conversation because they didn't have the base level knowledge, for example. But my sense is something's going to flourish where I think the dudes, the guys, the boys they're going to be like, shit, all our women are completely into this trauma stuff. And I guess I better learn this. I better heal my old wounds. I'm seeing more young folks, thankfully, be interested in this, like young guys. And by young, I don't mean like teenagers. I mean in their early 30s, late 20s, that kind of
My
thing.
cousin and sister they're doing a SBSM this year because I just didn't shut up about it, basically. I had to hold back sometimes. I'm just so excited about it. So they're doing it, and my sister's 27, cousin's 30. So they're right around that age. But yeah, I think ultimately it's not really about the specific thing. Like, it's like, I feel like I finally found something I really, 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 really believe in. There's a real sense of mission. Like, I get why you do it, and Seth, like there's this, the world needs this, like this probably more than just about anything. So it's like, I just want to be involved in some way, whether it's one-on-ones or whether it's working for another company or doing just somehow, somewhere, like I want to share it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll keep talking. We'll keep our connection. This has been a fun talk. I know, like, we could go for 2 more hours.
Easily.
You've got something. I've got something. Thank you, John, for your time and your energy and your commitment. Thank you to your dad for his work. And everything that we've mentioned, I'll find the reason. Well, like the books, we'll link it below and people can find. And do you have a site, a website?
Not for this work yet. No,
Okay.
I've got a site for my marketing business, but it's probably not really relevant.
Oh, we'll put that down. You never know. Someone needs help with their marketing.
Dropdeadcopy.com.
Okay. Well, you'll have trauma-informed marketing, so it's perfect.
Well, I'm already emailing people, like trying to figure out relating it to copywriting, or, I sent an email out yesterday about why meditation is dangerous. I think it was called Meditation Sucks. And then a link for people to sign up for a free email course, which I haven't created yet.
Hey, as an aside, that could be a good way to get the boys in, because they're being told by so many people, you got to start meditating. And they're like, I don't want to do that. So it's like, if there's something that can lasso them in, it's like, you don't have to sit cross-legged, because most of them probably can't comfortably, right? It's like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Actually, we want to work with energy and emotions that are powerful, like anger. The anger thing is a good one for the guys, I think, to let them know that if it can be contained and used in a powerful way, it's very healing.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of, I think, this work is like framing it up, instead of being boys don't cry and we're all stoic and we don't feel anything. It's like, like teaching people that there's incredible power when you start to open up to this stuff. And it's not like, weak, submissive, vulnerable. Like, it's not that kind of energy. This makes you far stronger as an individual, whether you're a man or a woman. And, but I think most guys don't get that yet. But they will. They will.
You'll help them with that.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the courses, just everything. It's like, I've already said it a bunch of times, but yeah, it's amazing, life-changing. I'm so glad I found you and Seth, and I'm just so excited to keep going, basically.
We'll keep in touch.